So our learning together today is it's a little complex. It's a little complicated. It's a little freaking me out. I got to say, people right in front, and you're not like kids, uh, but that's okay. So there's a bunch of stuff, and it all hinges on this. I'm sure you're all doing these at home. Gratitude jar. Last week I talked about this, and Lori did a little story that we posted on Facebook and talked about a little bit. And the idea is that there are 50 days, including the Sundays, from Thanksgiving to the first Sunday of Advent. And the idea is to have at least one thing a day that you're thankful for. And put it in your jar, and we're going to do something with it at the end of the 50 days, don't worry. But nothing public, so you won't necessarily have to share the things you're thankful for, just in case that makes you nervous. But no, it does me. Anyway, mine already has a bunch of paper in it. I think, Lori, you have a tree in yours or something. But you can put anything in it, just stuff that you're thankful for. And today, I'm thankful for a bunch of things that I'd like to mention. The first is because, you have to. It's part of the life, and we should really do it as part of the life and work, really, because it's part of the life of our church. Anybody having a birthday this week or today, say, who wants to fess up to it, who's in the room, so we can embarrass you personally? No? I see. Okay. There are lots of birthdays this week, and we sometimes sing happy birthday. Bashaw actually has a little birthday song that they sing, so I'm going to have to solo both of them in just a second. But there were lots this week, including Grayson Wilson in Bashaw, and Grace Bamber, and just like, I'm just mentioning those two because one of those is really young and one of those is really, older, Grace, older. And there were lots of birthdays though, so please hum along if you're in the room, or sing along at home. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, everyone who's having a birthday this week or today. Happy birthday to you. And if you happen to know the birthday song from Bashaw, happy birthday to you, oh happy birthday to you. May you feel Jesus near every day of the year. Happy birthday to you, oh happy birthday to you. Have the best year you've ever had. Can I get a silent amen? Excellent, okay. Another thing that we're thankful for today is that it's World Food Sunday, because the 16th of October is World Food Day. And so there's lots to celebrate in that. And most significantly, I think, it's not just that you have food. And to be honest, it was my gratitude for today, always having food to share. We always have food to share, no matter how little or how much we have. We always have food to share with others. And that's an important part of the story of Jesus too, right? Jesus was always sharing food with people. And on a day that we're remembering, well, food, we remember it in a variety of ways, right? We're thankful that we have food, but we're also aware that there are places in the world, and that includes just down the street as much as across the globe, where people don't. And so we share, and so we find things like food banks are important. If you brought a donation for the food bank today, that would be great. If not, you can always drop one off at the food bank, and they would love to have a financial donation too, I'm sure. That's always important, so they can get the things that they need that they don't always have donated. But there's other organizations that do important stuff, like even just the Red Cross and organizations like that around the world. Your mission and service dollars help support programs like that. And they particularly, and we're going to hear about this a little bit later in the service, they particularly support organizations like Food Grains Bank. And Food Grains has quite a number of groups in central Alberta who grow crops, and in order to help generate revenue for the food bank. They have people who travel. Terry Gabert in Bashaw has been numerous places on behalf of the Food Grains Bank to support people in other parts of the world. And it's such an important thing. And you can find out lots more about Food Grains Bank just by going to foodgrainsbank.ca. Make sure you go .ca on the internet and find their page. There's really cool information there, and lots to know about that. So In order to help us maybe think a little bit more about it being World Food Day, we got a story today. It's called Bagels from Benny. And it's a story that requires a little bit of an introduction. This is going to be a theme this morning, you'll see, because Benny is Jewish. And of course, that's why Benny is taking bagels to people, because that's a traditional Jewish thing. And if you've never had a bagel, you should. I don't know what's wrong with you. Eat a bagel. They're awesome. But there's some things in the story that are important to know, like the fact that Benny goes to synagogue, not church. Right? His community meets in the synagogue, and that they meet on Saturday. And that the important book in the synagogue is called the Torah, not the Bible. But the Torah is, in fact, the Hebrew part of the Bible that we know, and that it's kept in an ark at the front. Right? We have a table, and in a synagogue there's an ark, and it's just a big cupboard that the Torah is kept in. I hope that's all the information you need. Here's Bagels from Benny.
Bagels from Benny by Aubrey Davis, illustrated by Dusan Petrusek. The sun was just waking up when Benny ran downstairs to Grandpa's bakery. He always helped Grandpa before he went to school. He swept the floor and dusted the shelves. He put cookies and cakes on the counter. He put bagels and buns in the bins. Benny loved to help his grandpa. People bustled in and out of Grandpa's bakery all day long. Some bought bread and some bought cake. Some bought apple strudel. Everyone bought bagels. Grandpa baked the best bagels in town. So crusty outside, Mrs. Silver declared. So soft inside, added Mr. Gold. You put love in your bagels, gushed Mrs. Green. Thank you so much. Grandpa handed Mrs. Green a bag full of bagels. Why thank me? He asked. And who else should I thank? Laughed Mrs. Green. Just then the clock struck 8. We'll be late for work, cried Mrs. Silver. Dear me, gasped Mr. Gold. Toodaloo, sang Mrs. Green, and they scurried out the door. Benny was puzzled. Why shouldn't Mrs. Green thank you? You make the bagels. Grandpa lifted Benny onto the counter. Benny, he asked, aren't bagels made with flour? Yes, said Benny. Doesn't flour come from wheat? Yes, Benny nodded. Where does wheat come from? From the earth, answered Benny. And who made the earth? God did, Benny replied. Grandpa smiled. Well then, thank God for the bagels. It was a good idea. So Benny closed his eyes. Thank you, God, he whispered. And then he waited. Did he hear me, Grandpa? You ask difficult questions, Grandpa chuckled. God always hears you. But Benny wasn't so sure. If God had really heard him, why didn't he answer? At school that day, Benny did no work. He didn't read and he didn't write. At recess, he sat alone in the shade of a tall maple tree. What's wrong? Asked his teacher. What's wrong? Asked his friends. I'm thinking. Benny sighed. Benny was still thinking when he went to bed that night. Maybe God didn't answer because I didn't thank him properly. He yawned. Maybe there's some other way to thank God for his bagels. And Benny fell asleep. Early Friday morning, a little sunbeam danced into Benny's bedroom. It jumped onto his pillow and tickled his eyelids until they opened. Benny's eyes sparkled in the sunlight because suddenly he had an idea. He leapt out of bed and ran downstairs. That morning, Benny worked very hard in the bakery. Grandpa, he asked, Would you pay me for my work? Grandpa raised his eyebrows. Pay you? How much? A big bag of bagels, replied Benny. Why bagels? Grandpa asked. It's a secret, whispered Benny. Grandpa laughed and gave Benny a huge bag full of bagels. Benny took them to the synagogue. This is where people speak to God, he thought. Maybe I can thank him here. He opened the door and he peeked inside. It was dark and very still. Benny trembled. Maybe I shouldn't. It's not prayer time yet. But Benny took a deep breath and he walked in. He tiptoed past empty wooden benches. He climbed the stairs to the big wooden cupboard, the Holy Ark. His heart pounded. He could barely breathe. Maybe I shouldn't open it. Maybe God won't like it. The Torah is inside, and it's his special book. But Benny took a deep breath, and he pulled the doors open. King of the universe, he whispered, I brought you some bagels. I know you make them, but you never taste them because Grandpa sells every last one. Benny put the bag in the ark and closed the doors. Thank you for making the best bagels in town, Benny whispered. Then he ran off to school. On Saturday, Benny and Grandpa went to the synagogue. Everyone prayed and sang, but not Benny. He kept his eyes on the doors of the ark. Had God eaten the bagels? He wondered. When the ark was opened and the Torah was taken out, Benny looked inside. The bagels were gone. His heart skipped and his eyes danced. I'm so glad you like them, he whispered. I'll bring you more. Week after week, Benny worked in Grandpa's bakery. Every Friday, Grandpa gave him bagels, and every Friday, Benny gave the bagels to God. Grandpa became curious. What was his grandson doing with all those bagels? One Friday, he followed Benny to the synagogue. He waited in the shadows and watched. They're still warm, just the way you like them, murmured Benny. And he opened the ark and put the bag of bagels inside. What are you doing? Grandpa bellowed. Benny spun around. Grandpa, he gasped, I'm thanking God. You're putting bagels in God's holy ark? Cried Grandpa. But he likes the bagels, insisted Benny. Every week he eats them all. Oh, Benny, Grandpa laughed. God doesn't need to eat. He doesn't have a mouth or a stomach. He doesn't even have a body. He doesn't? Benny frowned. Then where do the bagels go? Grandpa looked at the ark. He looked at Benny. He stroked his beard and he scratched his head. I don't know, he sighed. Suddenly, the front door creaked open. Grandpa put a finger to his lips and pulled Benny into the shadows. In walked a man in a very tattered coat. He took the bag of bagels from the ark. Oh, Lord, I was so hungry, he sobbed. For weeks you have fed me. From heaven you sent such beautiful bagels. He tucked the bag under his coat. I have good news for both of us, he said. I have found work. He wiped away his tears. Now I can feed myself, and you can stop baking bagels. The man smiled as he quietly closed the cupboard. You helped me, Lord. Now I promise to help others. Then he left. Benny buried his face in Grandpa's coat and wept. God didn't eat my bagels. That poor man took them. Grandpa's eyes grew wide with wonder. Benny, he asked, you wanted to thank God? Yes, Benny sniffed. Well, you did, said Grandpa. How? Benny asked. Didn't you give bagels to a hungry man? Asked Grandpa. Yes, Benny replied. Didn't he promise to help others? Yes, Benny nodded. Then you made the world a little better, said Grandpa. I did? Benny wondered. You did. Grandpa smiled. And what better thanks could God have? The end.
What can I do? What can I bring? What can I say? What can I sing? I'll sing with joy. I'll say a prayer. I'll bring my love. I'll do my share. What can I do? What can I bring? What can I say? What can I sing? I'll sing with joy. I'll say a prayer. I'll bring my love. I'll do my share.